why does everything feel so empty these days? Everything just feels kind of dull, pointless, a bit unfulfilling, I suppose. It doesn't really matter where you look in the world, everything just seems lifeless. And as I was pondering this question and trying to understand why everything feels this way, it made me think back to an ancient proverb or an old story of a king who lived many, many thousands of years ago. And he was a very wise king, a very knowledgeable king. And he kind of asked the same questions. What was really, I guess, the meaning of life, and why did it feel so empty, so purposeless? And being a king and having all of the power that he had pretty much anything at his disposal. And so at the start of his journey, he sought wisdom and knowledge. He read lots and studied lots and tried to learn as much about the world as there was to learn. And after a time of doing this, he came to the conclusion that, yeah, wisdom was good, and as was knowledge, but all it really led him to was more sorrow. The more he understood, the more knowledge he gained, the more he realised he didn't know. And I guess it kind of opened his eyes to the world more. And so next he thought, well, if wisdom and knowledge isn't the answer, perhaps pleasure is. And so he went off and sampled all of the finest things the world had to offer. All of the food, all of the women, all of the drink, basically any form of entertainment that he could find. He sampled it all, and to excess at points as well, and tried to, I guess, find the meaning behind pleasure. What was the point of it? Was there a place he could get to where pleasure didn't feel empty, where the void inside him wasn't a void? And yeah, after many years of trying all of the pleasure the world had to offer as well, again he found that it was all just a bit pointless, a bit meaningless, a bit empty. And so he changed his direction again and started to look. Perhaps riches and success were the answer. Perhaps that would fulfill him. And so he set about acquiring vast quantities of wealth, and with his wisdom and power and knowledge, it wasn't difficult for him to do. He amassed, the largest hoard of gold, the most horses, the most cities of any kingdom around him. And yet, even after all of that, he still felt empty. He still felt like it was all just pointless. One day he was going to pass away, he was going to die, and all of the possessions that he'd amassed, all of the pleasure he'd enjoyed, all of the knowledge he'd gained, it would kind of be lost, it would be scattered. It might last for a few generations to his children, his grandchildren, perhaps even his great-grandchildren, but there would come a point where his legacy would, I guess, vanish or be watered down so much that, he again couldn't see the point of it. And finally he turned and thought to himself, well, if none of these are the answer, perhaps it's what I can make, what I can create, what I can give to the world that will give me this sense of purpose, this sense of meaningfulness. And I guess for a time it perhaps did. He created huge gardens and vineyards of absolute splendour and wonder. He built palaces and temples that stunned and awed people. And all of these things he did and he made, and yet he still felt that emptiness. And so with all of his success and his wisdom and his knowledge, all of the pleasure that he'd enjoyed, he still felt empty. And finally, he, having studied all of this and looked into all of this, with all of the power and the kingdom at his disposal to do all of this, he realised that actually it wasn't himself that was trying to find something. It was a deeper calling, a deeper purpose, a deeper meaning to life. It wasn't anything that the world could satisfy. And so he turned his attention to the creator of it all, to God, and his conclusion after following that for a while was that the reverence and the respect of the creator of all things and the following of what he wanted for your life and not following what you wanted for your life, that was true meaning. That was the true purpose of life. And that story makes me think a lot about how things are nowadays. It's in the same story. If you know where it comes from, you will know the line, "There is nothing new under the sun." And I think that's very true, that people in ancient times feel exactly the same way about life as we do today. We have different things, yes, but none of it is really new. We seek our fulfillment and our purpose in things outward, things that the world can offer, whether that be money, success, fame, pleasure, wisdom, knowledge. All of those things, they don't really lead anywhere. They don't fill people up. You could look at some of the richest people in our world today, or the most powerful, often one and the same, Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos. And what is it that they're still striving after? What do they want more of? Are they content with the vast wealth and power that they've created? No, they're not. They want more of it. I suppose that kind of really sums it up, doesn't it? The richest and most powerful in the world still don't feel content with the amount of riches and power that they've amassed. And I think it's a Jim Carrey interview where he says that he wishes everybody could get rich and famous so that they could realise that the answer to life wasn't to get rich and famous. So where am I going with all of this? Well, for me in my life, I have certainly chased lots of those things before. I thought perhaps that by studying and getting a degree and learning lots, that would fulfil me, and it did to a point. But once I kind of finished the degree and got the piece of paper, it all felt a bit meaningless. It was just a means to an end to get me onto my career. I also chased pleasure for years, entertainment and women and parties, all of that stuff. And yeah, I have some fond memories from that. But again, it didn't fulfill me. It didn't matter how much I consumed. It wasn't enough. And then, more recently, I turned to the creative pursuits and started writing and drawing and creating things and making things. And that felt good. That did feel fulfilling to a point. But it still didn't fill that void that I had inside me. It all still felt meaningless and nothingy, really. And it wasn't until I turned my attention towards eternity, towards the great power in the universe, and really try to understand what it was that I was here for. It wasn't for any of those external things, and all I'd really been doing by chasing the external things was to, I guess, project into the world an image of who I was, and it wasn't me. It wasn't my calling. It wasn't my purpose. And until I shut that out and let go, it really was a letting go of those things and turning my attention to God and to revering and respecting Him and following what He had planned for my life, that I really, for the first time, felt a deeper sense of meaning, of purpose, of peace as well. I think that's probably the chief among those things that I felt a level of peace and contentment that I'd never had before. I'd never experienced. I'd spent my life chasing, and don't get me wrong, I don't feel that way all of the time now. You know, I still have my periods of scrolling endlessly on YouTube trying to find something that's, you know, gonna fill the gap, gonna make me feel better, I suppose. But it never does to a point. I can watch videos such as this which discuss these topics, and it's not really until I start to take action on the things that they say in those videos that I really start to feel any sense of that purpose, I suppose, of that meaning. It can leave you feeling quite empty if you just consume all of the time, and by stepping into a creative space, you can certainly find some fulfillment, but ultimately it's still emptiness if you don't know the creator, I suppose. I ran away from him for years. I ran away from God. I ran away from my upbringing. I was raised in church, and yeah, I thought the world could fulfill me and that I didn't need any of it. But as I grew older and I explored those things, much like that ancient king did, you know, I explored all of these different avenues as to what might the meaning of life be. It wasn't until I came back to faith and to God that I really experienced for the first time the contentment and peace that I had been seeking all of my life. And so I guess this video is a bit of an encouragement to you that you're not the only one who feels like the world's a pretty empty and hopeless place. You know, we can look in the news and at all of the war and hurt going on in the world, and it's very easy to get down and to get hopeless about things. But when we put our trust and our faith in one who is greater than all of that, it gives us that hope, that contentment, that peace, and we begin to see the world in a completely different light, in a completely different way. And it's really helped me to put all of those things that the king was searching for, the pleasure, the knowledge, the wisdom, the success, the riches, to put it all into perspective and realise that ultimately it's just all a bit pointless if our lives aren't aligned and aren't content as well. So I'm going to wrap it up there for today. I hope that helps some of you, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. God bless.